I tried to explain national security architecture in form of three concentric circles. We look at defense preparedness as such, that is slightly bigger remit than military preparedness. In any kind of a conflict, how do we win actually? We win by creating asymmetries. I'll give you three examples from the latest Operation Sindoor. Let me first tell you about the time part. You said you get up every day at 8 and you're on a study table. I do that 3.5 hours before. I get up every day at 4:45. At 4:45, I'm at the study table. I also have a good habit of taking down notes, what's happened in the day. That helps me. And of course, what you rightly said, that I interact with a large amount of people in service, out of service, in uniform, civilians, academicians, industry. It gives me a lot of ideas. So I note down those ideas, develop upon that. And then some of them actually find part of my talks. And when those talks mature, I've converted them, some of them into articles. So it's not very difficult if you actually want to do it. So I've done it twice, so 2 books. Yeah. The next question is what motivated me to do this. So these are my thoughts and ideas on matters military, I would say. And my idea was basically to establish a connect and reach out to the middle and junior level leadership of the Indian Army. With the senior level leadership, you are always interacting. Army Commander Conference, Combined Commander Conferences. They hear you out. But it's the middle level and junior. You can't really reach out to the whole armed forces, which is 60,000 strong. And this is important because the nature and the scope of reforms which we are attempting is so huge that every one of us have to be on the same kind of page. So this is one way to reach out to people so that they can understand what the senior leadership is thinking. Hopefully this will help develop some kind of strategic culture, motivate other people also to write like you. I believe you've written a book.
Yes, sir. Almost. Sir, just before we finish with General Vij, the last question I put to him, what advice does he give to the new military for jointness and integration? So I think he's spoken exactly what you have written in your book. So that means a journal who was then during Kargil days also speaks the similar thought which you have. But why both the books with the same name, sir? Because normally we don't say volume 1, volume 2, but both the names were same, sir.
Yeah, so when I wrote the first one, I thought there'll be a second one, but I didn't want to write 1 in it. But when I wrote the second one, so it is Ready Relevant Research in 2, part 2. Why 2 books? There could be 3 also. With the same name.
So that's the 3.5 hours early which he spends every morning.
So, the first book lays the basic foundation. It addresses the basic foundation of reforms. So it addresses issues like what is jointness and integration, what is higher defense organization, what is the national security architecture, how I perceive, what is change management. So these are the basic building blocks. It does contain some articles on war and warfare. But the second book is about application. You will find a larger number of articles on war, warfare in new domains, space, cyber. All this you will find in the next book. So that's the basic difference between these 2 books. There are some common subjects also. Like geography is one subject which always has fascinated me. So I've written about geography in both the books. 2 articles in the first one and 1 more in the second. So this is what.
And which will be the third one, sir?
Well, as I said, one was foundational. Maybe second was application. And how did we do it actually? Ops Sindoor.
Okay, sir. So that means we're now going to get an authentic Ops Sindoor book. All these books which have come from the newspaper ads or somewhere else. But now we're going to get an authentic book. Sir, in your book you've spoken about, I've heard these terms for the very first time, military geography and human geography. What exactly are these? Will you like to share with all of us?
So, I was actually a science student in India. But I don't know if there are some ex-NDAs of my times. There was one Mr. Dhotiwala. He used to teach us military geography and regularly. He used to be speaking very slowly and he used to allow us to take notes. The fascination, little bit of understanding of military geography came about during the NDA days. But military geography is important. These are military army officers or military officers. Whenever you're doing any kind of an appreciation of anything on a military problem, you first analyze the terrain actually. Then you come down to relative strength, then you come down to time and space. These are the three factors. But the first part you analyze is always geography. And at a larger geopolitical level, location of a particular nation actually determines its importance. And there's a saying that, that people who don't know their geography are likely to be condemned by history. So geography is important. All operations take place in an environment which is compasses of physical geography and human geography. So geography has two parts: physical geography, which is about the landscapes, which is about terrain, which is about climate, it's about weather. Human geography is about spatial distribution of population, religion, ethnicity, language, culture. Human geography is equally important in understanding warfare, especially counterinsurgency and CICT operations. This is important so that you understand where you are operating and why it is important. Sometimes we say that geography is relevant, nahi hai, different, but I think even human geography is relevant today. Even if you map the complete human geography of say JNK, Northeast, or whichever is the conflict zone area, today when we talk about cognitive warfare, when we are talking about influence operations, psychological operations, social engineering, unless we don't understand the human geography of that particular place, I don't think this is possible. So both geographies are important and will remain relevant for times to come, physical as well as human geography.
So in both your books, you have a lot of articles on warfare, wars and strategy. Are you fond of somebody on whom you've actually worked on these? Because there's a lot of articles on this. I know the CDS is supposed to do this only, but then how did this come into this book?
No, you see, it was my general observation that when I joined as CDS, or when the government appointed me as CDS, that the general narrative in think tanks and any kind of discussions were not related to war, warfare and war fighting. I've changed that narrative. It used to be on issues like geopolitics, diplomacy, resource management for geopolitics in Indo-Pacific, human capital for national building. Such kind of topics used to be the general discussion in forums in which a lot of people would take part. This was freely available, this particular knowledge. But I think that did not directly contribute to our basic bread and butter profession. Our profession is war fighting. I have tried to change the narrative towards this, and I'm quite happy that most of the discussions that take place now are somehow connected to this particular aspect and not to peripheral kind of subject, which was the case earlier. And what you are alluding to is someone famous, etc., which I may have mentioned. I've actually, in all my articles on warfare, you will find some quote or something about Clausewitz. So, which I thought is one original author who understood warfare, and that's the time actually modern warfare was transforming. There's a Napoleonic Wars, etc. So he wrote it at a time that it was still relevant. Wars were relevant before that, medieval and ancient wars, but they're no longer relevant. So Clausewitz is one which I have quoted most of the articles about that.
So very nicely you've given the concentric circles of national security architecture in your book. How is it different, or will you like to draw some circles for national defense security strategy? How will the two, what are these circles basically? So they're very nicely explained if you see his book.
So I tried to explain a national security architecture in form of 3 concentric circles. The outermost circle describes how do you secure a nation. This remit is largest. Then there is a middle circle which is part of it. Then how do you defend your nation? Its remit is slightly lesser than that. And in the center of that is military preparedness of a nation. All these circles are not watertight compartments, they interact with each other. They may help you derive a national security strategy, defense strategy, or a military strategy. All three of them. So when you talk about national military strategy or military preparedness of a nation, which is the core of these three circles, our job is how to visualize how wars will be there in future, understand the current operating environment, what are the kind of threats and challenges, equip ourselves, then train ourselves, war game those things, come out with plans, contingency plans. That is all about military preparedness. That's all we, when serving, we all do that. When we look at defense preparedness as such, that is slightly bigger remit than say military preparedness. In that, what you're looking at, say, defense preparedness of a nation from the point of view of defense manufacturing. So you want to be independent of any kind of a foreign listing. So that is one. You may like to build surge capacities during war. That could be one. Defense R&D could be third. Strategic culture could be fourth. So the remit is slightly larger. And security, how do you secure a nation? That remit is it's a long-term thing. It will depend on diplomacy, economy. It will depend on technologies. So all these things may be required to secure a nation. All of them work in tandem with each other. We have structures for all of this, and they need to interact freely with each other for a nation to successfully do this.
So in your second book, you're talking a lot about space warfare and space. Was it by design, or is actually the second book is giving a lot of things about space warfare?
In any kind of a conflict, how do we win? Actually, we win by creating asymmetries against the adversary. These asymmetries are easy to create in new domains, not in old domains. So when the warfare was there on land, people invented the maritime domain. So there you could create asymmetries, and that kind you could influence warfare over there. And the outcome of conflict actually dependent by the guy who was initiating the conflict. He initiated this in the new domain in which he had created asymmetry. Similarly, you look at air power. Precisely what we're following. So today we are at the cusp. These traditional domains of land, maritime, air are over. I think these new domains are important. Space is important domain, and if there are asymmetries, the other nations will exploit those asymmetries to defeat you in space first. The warfare in other domains will come later. Means if you start a fight in land domain, in an older domain, the fight will always be bloody, very, very bloody. It will be difficult, hard slogging match. But in a new domain, it will be smart, fast, and technology intensive. So you will win in that new domain. So that's why I thought space was important, and that's why I put a number of articles on space.
So you've spoken about third RMA, which you will like to introduce. It's so difficult to get the three services talking let's achieve it tomorrow. It's so difficult to achieve that. And that's what the journal also mentioned. Don't be in a hurry. Let's give time. How do you propose to do the third RMAs?
So third RMA, first we must understand this particular concept. When I said first RMA was to do with maneuver warfare because of advances in mobility, in surface mobility and air mobility. And then the new concepts like air-land battle, deep battles, those kind of concepts came in. And then was net-centric warfare, battlefield transparency and net centricity, battlefield awareness. Third is, and these were all influenced by some of the other technologies. One I said was mobility. Second was because of communication, ICT, etc. But today, there are a number of technologies which are competing with each other to transform warfare. So I have called this as convergence, so because it's a convergence of large number of technologies which is taking place. It's also convergence of first and second RMA. It's a convergence of kinetic with non-kinetic, contact with non-contact. It's convergence of operational level, tactical level, strategic level. So there is convergence of number of things. It's going to get very complex kind of in warfare. Advances in this number of these fields in which advances are taking place, we have to, all services have to be taking part in it together at the same kind of speed. There were instances in which Some places, some service had taken a lead and they were progressing say, in artificial intelligence separately or in quantum separately. We are trying to get all these people together, coalesce all their efforts in one particular manner. And that's the role of headquarter IDS, the ICT division over there. I think they're doing a great job. We've already come out with a kind of a roadmap, which we've called as multi-domain operations in net-centric warfare. So it's basically leading on to data-centric warfare, where data will help us take better decisions in future. So it's a futuristic concept, but we've made a proper roadmap for that, and hopefully we'll be able to achieve it.
Once again, sir, a very important question, because one of the allocation of business rule asks the CDS to get the jointness in. Jointness is in. From Kargil days, even the journal said that the jointness is happening. How about integration, sir? Why I ask this question is, there's a very nice photograph of the RM, Madam Sitaraman, and the entire Tri-Services crest being drawn in Port Blair, where in the swords, the army officers and army men are there. In the anchor, the Navy and the Coast Guard is there, and the wing, the Air Force is there. That's jointness. They've joined together to form this crest. If we shuffle them all and put them in these places, that means all are mixed. We don't know. In the anchor, you could get an Air Force uniform and so on. That's integration which I think of, sir. Because let's say in the Andaman Nicobar, I remember, sir, we have 3 units which are flying down here: Coast Guard, Navy, and Air Force. They couldn't share the pilots between the two. Sinkan is in common commander. They couldn't share the spare parts to each other. They did not have the servicing schedule. All the 3 aeroplanes designed, drawn, built by HAL. How far have we reached in all these? I am talking 5-7 years ago. So now we've obviously moved ahead.
Okay. So, let me see, each individual service, we all aspire to join the Army, Navy. So we are not trying to say that there be one common uniform. No. Each service will retain its individual identity. That's important, because they have a specific kind of role. So there's no dilution in that. We are trying to take the best practices out of each service. So not the worst. So it's not the lowest common denominator, but the highest common factor, which we try when we look at jointness. So rather than giving you what all we have done, I'll give you 3 examples from the latest Operation Sindoor. We'll try and explain as to what jointness is or what integration is. So during this period from 22nd to 7th, there was a lot of requirement to reassess as to what is the requirement of assets which have to be moved from northern borders or from east to the west. It required a lot of movement by air actually, and this was all done. I didn't even come to know, the chiefs came to know. This was done at the level of say 2 stars, no not 2 stars, 1 stars, without even asking their vice chiefs, because they knew that this has to be done. And they were able to speak to each other. We had built that kind of a confidence. So it was done at that level, back most I think 2-star level. They moved all this aircrafts, etc. because it had to be, it is a priority. That we have that Operation Layer movement plan. So that will get disrupted, who's to move, but it's all done seamlessly without. So this is, I would say, is an example of jointness. Integration, another example I can give you is all 3 services are common equipment now. Say MR SAMs are there, BrahMos are there. So there were places where some equipment was unserviceable because of want of some spares, etc. Now that we have integration, we have common communication architecture, and the inventory is visible to the services. So one could find, okay, this is available with the Navy, that's available with the Army, so that inventory is available. So they just spoke, got that particular thing. So, and that's 100% equipment was serviceable. So it's not because of want of something. We are able to exchange that because. So here we have integrated our, say, communication networks in which inventories are able to speak to each other. I'm not saying that we are in a perfect stage. It's an offline mode. We're trying to get it online, so it will take me some time. So we are at a particular stage of integration. Another example which I can give you is still, in spite of all this, sometimes we don't know each other's capabilities. So I've given this example that many of you may be knowing or may not be knowing that the Navy also took part in a couple of the strikes which took place across the border. They used their equipment, Palm 400 and Palm 120. which is the loiter ammunition, which had a very long range, and but was available with the Navy. But unfortunately, this was not known to the Army and the Air Force, but it was known to headquarter IDS because we integrate things. So we offered that to the Army and the Air Force, and they were also used. So it was a joint. So Marcos went to land borders along with the Air Force and Army. And so this is, I thought, by giving you an example, it will be better. Otherwise, we have, say, 197 odd initiatives across 8 domains. We've achieved 56. That will mean nothing to you. So, but that's for me to keep statistics and keep chasing people.
I know the audience won't know, but I'll understand, sir, because I've spent so many years in IDS. Sir, you've very nicely spoken about joint culture. What exactly is this, and how is this going to help us in get the jointness?
So, culture is something to do with ritual, traditions, practices that's developed over a period of time. A lot of time. So like the Air Force, 77 years, 78 years, a different kind of a culture. Navy will have different. So joint culture is something, different. So what are we doing about it? So in your previous question you had asked there's something to do about that we have common platforms, aviation platforms. So we all know that, the Navy, Coast Guard, Army, not the Army, the Air Force, they fly Dorniers, or you may have MiG-29s. You may be having the same ALH or Cheetah variety, LCH between 2 services. But the aviation part of all the 3 services had their own culture, their own practices. I've combined them. So today you have one common aerospace safety organization. It's manned by all 3 services. We just done it. Rana Dev, who's about to retire, he was instrumental in getting it done. So we have now common aviation standards amongst all the services. They're all different. The Army's aviation standards, whether what is low visibility, at what altitude he can land, what kind of a helipad he requires, what is categorization of pilots, all were different. Now we have common aviation standards for training, for medical, for everything. So these kind of things we are attempting. So wherever there is something which is common, say like staff will be always common. I mean, we don't want to say that Air Force, I said common, means that uniqueness of Air Force should remain with Air Force. So Air Force trains its staff, their pilots, etc. No one is disturbing that. But when we are in a common environment, suppose you have a joint headquarters or say theatre headquarters in future, so you'll have staff which is common. So this has to be trained in a common manner, which we are trying to do in staff college. So you have a deep purple division. So people now attend a Army Staff College, Air Force Staff College, Navy Staff College, and there's a Joint Staff College, which about 40 or 50 officers are attending. It's the second course which is running there. So we are developing the joint culture in those people where there is commonality first.
So the book says Gen Anil Chauhan. Now the book is from Gen Anil Chauhan or from the CDS? What was there in your mind when you wrote the book? I wind up with this, sir.
Actually, there's a disclaimer over there. It says that these are the views of Gen Anil Chauhan and not the views of MOD. So, and that's how it got a clearance actually. Otherwise, it would have worked.
Incidentally, he is authorized to say MOD because earlier when we used to say MOD, we actually meant DOD. MOD is now DMA also. So he wears the 3 hats: Permanent Chairman, Chief of Staff, Secretary, DMA, and the CDS. So how do you do all these 3, sir?
So that's why it's not the views of MOD, because I'm also Secretary to Government of India. So so it's the personal views. We must take it at that. And one more thing I must add. Copyrights are not available with me hereafter. They are with St. Jude's. That's our think tank for Tri-Services think tank. So I have given this rights to St. Jude's actually. So they are getting it published, and whatever is between the publisher and them, it's there. My job was only to write. Thereafter, it was given to a think tank, the copyrights, etc. That lies with them.